Kumar Kundu for the today talk on application of density functional theory towards innovation in material science and technology. And I also would like to mention that he is my doctoral thesis supervisor. So he is very kind to give permission and accept my invitation to speak regarding this application of density functional theory on the innovation of material science and technology. Sir, please, now you can start, sir.
Hello everybody and good morning and welcome to the presentation. Okay, so and thank you for nice introduction, Shunangsu. Okay, so this is I think this is for me the this type of presentation organized by Shunangsu. In the first part, I have talked about a little bit on the introduction to DFT, and also we have showcased our own study. Okay. And today, I don't know whether the participants are the same or different. So I'll again introduce briefly on the density functional theory, and let me present my thing. Okay, let me see. Okay, so can you see the presentation now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes, sir. Okay. So as introduced by Shunangsu, today's topic will be on the application of density functional theory towards innovation in material science. Okay. So this is a kind of a modeling technique. So as you know, why we do modeling, because we just approximate in some kind of a numerical or mathematical ways, so that we can predict their property. But in this case, we are talking at the atomic or molecular level. So the theory are not very common to us. What we can see nowadays. So essentially, we need to deal with the quantum mechanics. So your perspective should now a little bit to be changed about the quantum mechanics, because it is not very common, or it's not so much intuitive. Okay, essentially, quantum mechanics, as you know from if you have any initial background, so essentially it's kind of it's not deterministic. And at the same time, also we are dealing with the particle as a wave. So we need to deal with different kinds of the mechanics. This is called the wave mechanics or Schrodinger equation. So this thing you need to keep in your mind. Another thing also you need to keep in mind that we are talking about at the atomistic level. So there are and it is not solvable. The theory itself is not solvable. You cannot solve it exactly not for more than one particle. So you need to do some kind of the approximation. Okay. So there are various kind of approximation, and one approximation is this density functional theory. So simply, I may just call it a DFT. So DFT stands for density functional theory. Okay. So what I will do, I have divided my talk into three parts. One is the brief introduction to density functional theory for materials modeling. Then some of the general application, and if time permits, I'll go to part 3. That means a density functional theory study of lanthanum nickel oxide. What we have done in our lab. Okay, so let's begin on the introduction to the density functional theory. And before I begin that, you need to know a little bit about the materials, and also some few slides will be on the materials. Okay, so as you know, the materials means what the things we use, and which also require some kind of the processing before we use it, because it need to have certain kind of the function or property, so that it is of our use. Okay, and these materials can be divided into according to their chemical their chemistry or the chemical composition, and based on this, generally it's divided as metal, polymer, ceramics, glasses. Glasses can be called as one part of the ceramics, and elastomer, which is a kind of the rubber like thing. Also, it can be an extension of the polymer. At the same time, also maybe this single type of composition may not give the desired property. We need to combine them to make the hybrid. Let's say metal and ceramic or metal and polymer, they are combined together to make hybrids. Like let's say this hybrid can be sandwich type, or maybe let's say segmented type or cellular type. Okay. So now the density functional theory can be applied for all different types of these the different materials at the atomistic level. Okay, and this is the on the chemistry side, but on the physics side, that means we need to have certain their functionalities or properties so that we can apply it. So the materials also can be classified according to their function they does. Okay, basically it can be kind of a structural materials which can be used to, let's say, building, make building, bridges and all. Then aerospace, where we need to have high strength, low density materials, biomedical, electronic materials like semiconducting materials, superconducting materials, energy technology and environment, where you need to have the materials to convert the energy from one form to another form, or to store it, or to transmit it. Then the magnetic materials which can be used for generating power. At the same time, also there are the magnet also have their own uses. Then optical materials which can be used for different kind of this, let's say, laser and other also optoelectric materials and all. And the smart material which can be used for, let's say, sensor or different memory and all. Okay, so these are different materials. Now question is that DFT also can be used for different types of material, because DFT itself will start from the chemistry of it, that it starts from the atomistic level, and then it predicts there are different properties. Okay, so it can predict also maybe single type of material, maybe hybrid type of materials, maybe say one nowadays also you can say that 2D types of material, 3D types of materials, different kinds of the nanomaterials and all. Okay, so to come to the perspectives of this materials modeling, we need to see where we stand at what the length scale and time scale we stand. Okay, so generally, if you look at this figure, you can see that a material length scale generally we can see in the naked eye maybe around in the range of the, let's say, centimeters kind of thing. So which are in the kind of engineering designs and which have got millions of atoms. So we cannot use this the density functional theory. So density functional theory can be used for very small number of, let's say, atoms or molecules, maybe in the range of 100 to thousands atoms. Okay, and there the governing principle are not the Newtonian mechanics, but essentially it's the quantum mechanics, and these are called the electronic structure theory. So our focus will be in this range. You can see, so this will be kind of the electronic structure method. Sometimes it's called the quantum mechanical method. Sometimes it called also the first principle based method, because we are not doing any kind of the other parameter we are not introducing. It is just the atoms or electrons. We are playing with the atoms and electrons without any further parameter. So that's why it's called also the first principles method. Okay, and also little bit, if you need to have the in the system, if you have a large number of atoms, then we can go to the molecular dynamics. But in this case also we are solving the Newtonian mechanism. Maybe I think yesterday we had talk on the molecular dynamics. So essentially now, if you have to have little bit in between these two, there are methods which combines this quantum mechanics and molecular dynamics, which is called QMMM, quantum mechanical molecular mechanical methods. Okay, and also there can be extension to this. Generally, one property which you are getting from the quantum mechanics can be used for the molecular dynamics, or the property which you are getting from the molecular dynamics can be used for the larger length scale and time scale, like in the mesoscale type modeling and all. Okay, so now our focus will be in this range: the electronic structure method, quantum mechanical method, or first principle based method. And the one approximation is called the Hartree-Fock method that we'll see, and another approximation is called the density functional theory based method. And our today's talk will be on the density functional theory based method. Okay, so we got the perspective. Now, as you can see that it has got only limitation, that is the number of electron we can study are limited. In the case of the first principle based method, you can see that there are different kind of approximation we have just written down. The Schrödinger method, this is the original equation for any quantum mechanical system. It can be solvable, exactly solvable can only for one atom. Okay, so and any engineering materials are composed of millions of atoms. Okay, and in order to model it, essentially it also takes around 10 to 100 number of atoms. So essentially we need to go do some kind of the approximation. One approximation is the Hartree-Fock theory, another is the density functional theory. We will mostly deal with the Hartree-Fock theory and density functional theory, because some of the concept which is there in the Hartree-Fock theory is need to be used in the density functional theory. Okay, so that's why if you have to know density functional theory, also you need to have little bit of understanding on the Hartree-Fock theory. Okay, so coming back to the Hartree-Fock theory, so essentially it comes from the first principle method. I not go very details of it, okay, because as I mentioned that this here we are in the on the realm of the quantum mechanics methods. Okay, so and here also we need to say that the methods are not deterministic, because at that length scale, atoms behave as if atoms or electrons behaves as a wave. So you need to deal with this dual nature of the material by quantum mechanical methods. Okay, and it has been developed over in the first part of the 20th century, but it was not developed by a single person. It was developed by a branch of scientists. Okay, we'll just see very briefly about their contribution. Okay, so first contribution came from the Niels Bohr, and which postulate the quantum nature of the electron. He postulated that the electron can stay in a particular orbitals, have some fixed energy, and if the electron has to move, so it will move. The energy change is also discrete. Essentially, this is one of the paradigm shift you need to remember. That means the energy is not continuous. Okay, so that means you cannot go like one place, one floor to another floor in kind of a oscillator. It is not continuous. You need to take kind of take a lift, that is from one floor to another floor, something like that. Okay. Then comes to the Niels Bohr introduced the quantum nature of the electron, and then comes the quantum nature of the dual nature of the electron by de Broglie, when it says that the electrons are associated with the waves, or we can say that the momentum is determined by the wavelength, like momentum is h by mu, and also this also restricted that what are the types of the wave the wave it should have in order to have a stable configuration of the atom. That is where the electron are orbiting around the nucleus. So it should be something like that, where this allowed orbit should be it should have a kind of a constructive interference, something like that. It should not be something like this in this field. Okay, so orbit is fixed, and their wave nature, that means the wavelength, is also fixed. Okay, then comes to the then people thought about how to deal with these dual natures, and then comes the Schrodinger wave equation. It says that the H psi equal to E psi. H is a kind of operator. It's called the Hamiltonian operator, and E is the energy. So this is the kind of the Schrodinger version of a hydrogen atom. Let's say something like this, and which can be modeled using this equation. Okay, so this is the very heart of the quantum mechanics. H psi equal to E psi. H is the Hamiltonian operator. He incorporates all the kinetic energy and potential energy, and potential energy incorporate different attractive term and the repulsive term between the electron, neutron, and neutron. Okay. So now come to the fourth most person in designing the quantum mechanical methods comes the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Because if you see, now the particles are becoming a wave. So now if you say it's a particular wave, so if you know that in a wave you cannot say where the particle is. Okay, that means when the wave is precisely described, then we cannot say where the particle is. So in this case, this is a precisely described the momentum given by h by nu, but in this case you cannot see where the particle is. But if in order to confine in order to approximate a particle in terms of the wave nature, you need to superimpose a large number of waves, so that you can after let's say the superimposition, you will kind of get the confinement to the particle. So it is something like this. So in order to say the position of it, then you need to give a large number of waves. So essentially, here there is some uncertainty between the position and the momentum, or something like that. There, similar way also there will be uncertainty in the energy and time, something like that. Some kind of a conjugate property will have their inherent uncertainty if you measure simultaneously. Okay. Now comes to the so as you can see that now the Schrodinger had got equation. We can use it, but you can solve it only for a single particle, or the particle can be single electron in an atom, or it can be single, let's say, a free electron and all. Okay, so for a material property calculation, you need to do some kind of the approximation or simplification. So first simplification we do that, we forget about the gravity, relativity and time. But nowadays also there are methods where you can use the relativistic effect and the time effect also. Okay, so that is not our present the discussion topic. Okay, and the second approximation of we do that, we forget about the nucleus. That means we deal only on the electron. That means for a set of nuclear position, we use this equation only for the electron terms. So essentially the energy of the atom, we can just divide it energy of a nucleus plus energy of the electrons, and we are just apply this for the kind of the electron energy. And then later on nuclear energy we add on it this electron energy, and this Hamiltonian will be having now the kinetic energy of the electron plus interaction energy between the nucleus and electron. Capital I is for nucleus and small I for electron, and also then the repulsive energy between electrons. I and J can be two electrons themselves. And then also also we can further simplify by using the ground state. Only the materials at the ground state, that means we forget about the excited state. At the same time also, in order to simplify this because all these units, let's say energy units and all, are there in the range of, let's say, 10 to the power minus 30, something like that, if you use it in terms of the joule and all. And the lengths are also, if we use SI unit, then it will be very cumbersome. So essentially we use some atomic units to simplify it. Okay. So after all this simplification, now how it looks like, essentially you are getting something like that. So you get all the Hamiltonian for the electron part, and essentially it may sound like that this Hamiltonian operator is kind of a magic. It's just doing the magic on this psi or wave function. Then you are getting out the energy. So this energy can be kind of some observable. Okay. So essentially from here we can say that all the materials property, all the material characteristics are hidden within this wave function, this psi. Okay. Now it's depend upon what kind of magic you do. That means what kind of operator you use, and then also that will also give different types of E or observable. Okay. So there are different operators for this. So this Hamiltonian operator is for the operator for getting the energy. So that there can be operator for getting momentum. There can be operator for getting the position and all. Okay. So how this kinetic energy, potential energy looks like? Generally, the kinetic energy is given by something like the curvature of this wave function. So essentially, we take the double differentiation of this of the wave function. So this delta square, essentially the double differential, partial differential with respect to x, y, and z. Okay. And also these terms are kind of a Coulombic interaction term. The attraction energy between nucleus and electron, and this is the repulsion energy between electron and electron. So overall, we can say that we can just then write out this overall these wave function. Okay. Now, so essentially you are getting this the H term, then psi, and then E into psi. Okay. So this wave function, as I mentioned, that it contains all the information, and in order to have it should be double differentiable, and at the same time also it need to satisfy some of the quantum nature of the particle. So it should have certain property of the wave function. So if it should be continuous, square integrable, and single valued. Okay, and at the same time also, if you just if you consider one particle in the system, then if you have to then this generally this psi square mod psi square give you the probability density of finding the electron. So if you sum it over all the spaces, it should give the total number of electrons. Okay, and for a particular electronic state, it should give you 1. Okay, and it must be orthogonal, because this is a kind of a quantum nature of it. Essentially, essentially it's every electron in its atomic system, it should have their own set of the quantum number. Okay, so that means two electron cannot stay with all the four quantum numbers same. Okay, so there should be some kind of the this is called the orthogonality. If they are not same, that they cannot have, or they cannot, their the probability of finding their in a same quantum state by two electron, the wave function, it should be 0. Okay, so that also, it should also satisfy. Okay, so considering all these quantum nature of the particles and also getting the wave nature of the electronic particle using the Schrödinger equation, so we can say that what should be the types of the function. And generally, if you see that for the double differential case, generally plane wave is a good candidate for a for the wave function, and generally the plane wave is given by something like that exponential ikx. So this is a kind of a plane wave. It should have their own wavelength. So wavelength means essentially it should have their own momentum, or also it should have their own energy. Okay, and the plane wave can also form a standing wave. So in the standing wave, this will not propagate, but it will also oscillate. Okay. Now coming back to the first approximation or the first principle calculation, first approximation method by the Huntington. Now where you need to give this approximation? Essentially, the approximation you need to give it for here. Let's say the repulsion analogy between electrons and electrons, because you don't know where the one electron is with respect to another. Okay, so for that, essentially you need to do some kind of the approximation. So first approximation was proposed by Hartree, but unfortunately it only worked for single electron system. Okay, so what essentially it says that essentially he approximated that the interaction in any electron system that interacts with all other electrons at the same time is just too complex to solve even numerically. So essentially it says that each body is independent and interact with other in a kind of the average rate. That means the one electron, we can say that one electron, it will feel the effect of all the other electrons in a kind of an average sense. Okay, so essentially we can say that there is a kind of a non-interacting one electron systems. Okay, so this is only used for some one electron systems, and it has got certain drawback. Okay, and so we need to have the further modification. At the same time, also this one is not useful for the number, let's say more than one number of electrons, because it is not satisfy this anticipative condition or Pauli exclusion principles. Okay, so in order to take care for this, though Fock he used some other simplification. Essentially, yeah, he took care for this this anticipative principle and the Pauli exclusion principle by using by writing the wave function in terms of the determinant. It's called this Slater determinant. So you can see that if you just change the position of two or interchange the position of the two electrons, it will give a kind of the opposite sign. Okay, so that means it's automatically satisfy this anticipative principle. Okay. Now at the same time also this is it shows only for the two numbers of electrons. So if you have a n number of electrons, essentially all the system will consider as it consists of a single electrons where the electron repulsion part is seen by kind of average out field, and also it need to satisfy the orthonormality condition. So you need to have some kind of the normalization factor, something like that, so that if you just average it out all for a single wave function, for automatically it should give 1. Okay, so it should satisfy the orthonormality condition. Okay, so essentially we generally solve this one. So in order to solve this, also different terms also we need to consider for the Hamiltonian operator, as I have mentioned, and also in order to get the other values, essentially we need to use, because we are dealing with a large number of wave function and also they are in the probabilistic nature, so we need to look for their expectation value for some and their corresponding operator. Okay, so let's say for energy, this is the expression we need to use in order to get their energy after getting the wave function. Okay, so this start called the conjugate wave function. Okay, So essentially, this energy will have all these. It will have. So now the Hamiltonian part, you have the kinetic energy and the potential energy, and potential energy will constant the external energy. This is also external energy is also the energy between the interaction energy or the attractive interaction energy between the nucleus and electron, and u small I small j, this is the repulsion energy. Now the repulsion energy will have two terms. One is called the Coulombic repulsion term. This is simply the kind of the two charge. That means two electron charge repels each other. So from there, and also there is some kind of the exchange energy also there, because you need to because at the same time also you will see if there are two opposite spin, but they can stay together. Okay, but that means there should be some kind of the exchange energy. Okay, so this is purely quantum mechanical concept. Okay, now how do you get the wave function? Because we know the equation, but we don't know the form of the wave function. In order to know the in order to get the other property, or in order to get the energy, also you need to get the wave function. But you don't know the wave function. So you do some kind of the approximation. Okay, that means you first approximate the wave function, and then you do some kind of the minimization method. So that you just refine this wave function. Okay, so this process is called the variational approach. Essentially, how do you do that? You change the wave function, and go on changing it, and also calculate the energy so long that that you always get the lower energy. But at the end of it, you will get that you don't lower this energy. Then we can say that we are kind of on the ground state. Okay, so this is the variational principle. Okay, that means you go on change the wave function so that you decrease the energy, and you come at the end you should get the wave function. If you that means kind of you don't get lower value than kind of some threshold value, then we come across to the ground state. Okay, this is the principle used for all the quantum mechanical consideration, be it Hartree-Fock or density functional theory and all. Okay. Now this procedure is called the self-consistent procedure. As I mentioned, that you go on changing the wave function so that you go on decreasing the energy, and you come across some wave function, so that after that you don't get any further refinement on the or improvement on the energy. Okay, so that you get the wave function, and this procedure is called the self-consistent procedure because there are two unknowns. Okay, so from this Hartree-Fock theory, we can say that the same spin electrons are kept away from each other by antisymetry requirement, and the Hartree-Fock treatment fully account for this quantum thing by the exchange. So exchange energy we are dealing with, but the electrons of different spin also have a tendency to stay away from each other because the electrons are all same charge. So there will be some kind of the repulsion. Okay, but they are close together because of their spin, and this kind of the energy is called the correlation energy. This is the main part where this Hartree-Fock method fails. Okay, because it don't take care for this correlation type of energy, and in order to take care for the correlation energy, the density functional theory came into picture. Okay, and also the Hartree-Fock theory, the scale around in the Rabi, the order of n to the power 4, where n is the number of particles. Okay, it can be, let's say, for the electronicals, it can be number of electrons, and thus a doubling of system will increase the computer time about 2 to the power 4, let's say 16 times. But on the other hand, as you will see, for the density functional theory case, this order may be in the range of let's say n to the power 3. Okay, so the density functional theory also in that said that it is more efficient than the Hartree-Fock theory. Okay, so one advantage of density functional theory is that it is fast compared to Hartree-Fock theory. At the same time, also it can take care for this electron potential. Okay, so with this little introduction on the Hartree-Fock method, the first Hartree-Fock method is that it take care for all the quantum nature of the electron. At the same time, also it drastically take care for the electron-electron repulsion by averaging out all the electron effect into a kind of a average electron effect. Okay, so now we we are in a position to look at the more refined method or density functional theory based method. Okay, so now come to the density functional theory. Now, because time is short, essentially I'll go. I'll just give you the main points here. Okay, essentially in the Hartree-Fock method, we are dealing with the wave function. Okay, but wave function you cannot see or you cannot measure, and also there is some other property or other inherent property for any electronic system is the electron density. This electron density again also you can get it from the wave function. At the same time also it has been proved that for a particular system their electron density is fixed, and from the electron density itself you can get all the other properties. Okay, so that means instead of using the wave function, we can use the density function as a variable in the Schrodinger type of equation or quantum mechanical type of equation. Okay, so what are the benefit you are getting out of it? One benefit is that what the density functional theory now for a particular system consists of a large number of atom or electron, but the density the electron density is fixed. Electron density for the system is fixed, so it will be function of only x, y, z. Okay, it is not function of the which atom electron where and other. No, it only depend upon the average out of the density. That means it will be a function of x, y, z position. Okay, but in the case of the Hartree-Fock case, because you are doing one electron system one by one, at the same time also the overall case you are doing is a kind of a Slater determinant, and in the Slater determinant for each electron now we have got the wave for each electron will have their in the ground state itself, let's say, or in the kind of a closed system, so you will have their own wave function. So and a wave function is also function of each wave function is function of x, y, z and spin. So four dimensional. But in this case, now let's say if you have n number of particles, then in a Hartree-Fock method, the total number of variables will be 4n. But in the case of the density function theory, it will be function of only 3, function of 3 for each particle. So, but you will have n number of these 3, the n number of this function, but each of them will be of the function, but there will be this separate. So that's why you can drastically reduce the time requirement for calculation of the electric properties. Okay, so instead the main takeaway from here is that density function theory is that density function electron density function itself give all the state of the system, and from the density itself you can get the electron density itself, you can get all the property. But how to do this? How to get this electron density? Because you don't know the electron density at the beginning of it. Okay, but you can have some start, and then we need to do some kind of the approximation so that we get a kind of exact density or close to the exact density at the ground state. Okay, so for that there are two theorems are there, which what was the starting point for density functional theory. The functional is a function of a function. That means we are dealing with the function of a we are dealing, let's say, a property as a function of the electron density, but again electron density also is a function of the position x, y, z of the system. Okay, so that's why it is called the functional. Okay, so essentially how we deal with this, what kind of approximation we need to do so that we get the true electron density, and from the electron density we get all the other properties. Okay, so as you can see that electron density, again another advantage of density functional theory that you can measure the electron density. You can measure it by, let's say, X-ray measurement and all. Okay, and in this and also you can see this is the silicon isosurface, which isosurface give the electron density, and this electron density itself gives its property. Okay, and also if you look at the wave function nature of the electron, so you can say that, let's say, for silicon it will have 1s, 1s2, 2s2, 2p2, and this is the 3s and 3p. This is the valence part. Okay, so from there you can see that. Also, you can see there from the wave function itself, you can get the electron density. Okay, And this concept is also used for calculating the kinetic energy of the electrons, because you can see that in the Hartree-Fock case we have used that the del square of the wave function. Similar way also we start with some approximate. We now come to the picture that means the density function theory also use the wave function, but this wave function is only used for calculating the kinetic energy. Okay. But again, so initially we start off and then also we approximate it. Okay, but we'll see. We'll see for how we deal with this to get this density functional theory formula. Okay. Okay, so density we can say that it's essentially this will be the mod square of the wave function. But in this case, you need to remember that the wave function are now in the sense of density function theory, they are non-interacting. So that's why these are called quantum wave function. At the far. Okay. And also it would also show all the quantum nature. That means if you just integrate all over the density should be integrating. If you all over the place, it should give the total number of electrons. Again, this is a kind of a what we can say that this is a kind of a restriction, and this restriction is also used for getting for coming out the equation for getting the density. Okay, so we use this as a kind of a constraint. Okay, later on we will see. Okay, so first theorem, as I mentioned, electron density is a central pair. So that the first theorem, we state that there is a unique external potential determined solely by the ground state electron density. Okay, so external means essentially the interaction between the nucleus and electron. It's a measure of interaction between the electrons and nuclei, and it also depends on the number of electrons. It also depends on the types of the nuclei and all. Okay. And this there are two potential in the sense of the density function theory. We call it the external potential or internal potential. External, where you deal with the interaction between the nucleus and electrons. So electrons are called the internal part, and nucleus is called the external part. Okay, so so you can see that. So the internal part is the electronic kinetic energy plus the electron potential. That means all the related to the electron are called internal. Okay. So is independent of this external potential and therefore has a universal character. So this is another thing which you should remember, that the internal part it has got kind of a universal function. Okay, although its explicit formula is unknown. Okay, but we start with something which is kind of a approximation to this again, and this thus different Hamiltonian differ only by their external potential. So what is unknown now in this case? So because this internal part is kind of we can say that it's kind of a universal. It's same for all the different types of the functional form is the same. Whatever the system is, the internal function is the same. What is different? Because difference is that the types of the nuclei and their position. So the external part is different. So essentially now in the Hamiltonian, what is different for different system is only this external part. Okay. Thus, the electron density define the external potential and Hamiltonian and the wave function and all the ground state properties of the system in terms. Okay. So the first thing that the electron density itself is the central pair. At the same time, also electron density as a density which is different for different system will have different part due to this external part. Okay. But the internal part is a kind of a universal. It is almost same for different system. Okay. Theorem 2, how you find out the ground state energy. Okay, because you don't know the exact ground state energy. So at a given external potential, external means essentially it is only the function of the density. If we minimize the system energy as much as we can with the varying electron density, then we will reach the very bottom. So essentially this is a kind of another statement of the variation in principle, what I have just said before in the Hartree-Fock method. So essentially what we are getting, that energy will be now as a functional of the density. Okay, which have the let's say kind of a universal function for the internal part, and then the external and the electron function as the electron density. Okay, and this should be kind of the ground state. So what essentially now do now is change the electron density so that the energy is decreased, and at the same way also you come across you get the lowest of energy, this which is called the ground state energy. Okay. So essentially, we get the methods to find the electron density, and from the, as I mentioned, from the theorem 2 and from the theorem 1, we said that the density itself will give this all the property, because density itself gives this external property, the external potential, and if you know the external potential, internal potential is universal. So you know the Hamiltonian, and if you know the Hamiltonian, then you get all the other properties. Okay. So for any electron system, essentially the Hamiltonian will have the kinetic part, kinetic energy part. Then it will have the potential. This is the external potential, and this one is the other part of the internal. So the internal potential will be the kinetic energy part, and then electron repulsion part. Okay. So the last term contains the various interactions that are difficult to formulate in calculable equation. So Korn-Shummer had to take a kind of now. How do you use it? Because this is also was very difficult to treat in the case of the Hartree-Fock method. Here also, now this part, this electron repulsion part is also a little bit tricky. Okay, so that's why what they come across, they take a detour. That means first they calculate the energy, and then from the energy they come across to the potential. Okay. So kind of a detour. So taking the kind of a functional form. Okay. So for energy to functional, it is got a kind of in a differential way. You can get it. Okay. So essentially, we can just sum up the total energy, the kinetic energy, external energy. So this is the Hartree energy and the extent. So this is the same as we have seen in the case of the Hartree-Fock case. Okay. But in the Hartree-Fock case, we have not dealt with the correlation part. Okay. But in the case of the Korn-Shummer, if first assume that each electron was non-interacting at the ground state system, then they decompose the energy of interacting n electron into that of the under the given external energy. So what this drastic assumption they took, that then again in order to calculate this electron repulsion part, essentially they considered that the electrons are kind of a non-interacting. Okay, and then they come across with the interacting and non-interacting part. So kinetic energy, generally they have divided in two ways. One is the interacting part, another is the non-interacting. Okay. Now the Hartree-Fock energy and exchange energy also divided at the interacting energy and non-interacting energy. Okay. So this is the interacting part. Okay. So this is the correlation, interaction energy, then the kinetic energy. The interacting or correlation energy, non-interacting and interacting kinetic energy respectively. So what are the interacting part? So interacting part will be simply this, or quantum mechanical part, this exchange part, this interacting correlation, and this interacting the kinetic energy. So these come as is called the exchange correlation energy. Okay. So essentially, in the Korn-Shummer approach, now what you are getting is that instead of getting only exchange energy, as in case of the Hartree-Fock, we are getting that non-interacting. But in this case, we are getting the kinetic energy as a non-interacting way. Okay. Then external energy, then Hartree energy plus the exchange correlation. So this here in the XC, we are considering all the interacting part of the kinetic energy and the exchange energy and the correlation energy together. Okay, but these are almost kind of the functional form is not. Okay, because as you have seen that the external part is almost universal. This kinetic energy, if it's non-interacting, then it is easy to do. And Hartree also we can do it kind of a Coulombic interaction. Only difference is this exchange and correlation part. So that's why different functional are there to approximate it. Okay. So first three terms are relatively easy one to calculate, as is mentioned, while the last term is unknown and thus subject to some kind of the approximation. Okay. Finally, the repulsive interaction energy between the nuclei will be added as a constant within the, because this is only the energy of the electron for a particular set of this the nuclear position. Okay. And in order to get the total energy, also you need to add the nuclear repulsion term. Okay. And this is called the von Oppenheimer approximation. Okay, so that I think it was also given in the kind of the first simplification for the Hartree method. Okay. So essentially, in a pictorial way, what I can see, what the Korn-Shummer density function theory itself is that your system is interacting. That means the electron interact with another. That means you have an electron interacting system. Okay, so it will have the kinetic energy and the potential energy. Okay, and what they are doing that, yes, as if they are saying that all the electrons are kind of a robot-like. They are not interacting. Okay, that means so that the kinetic energy part is not, we are doing it in kind of a non-interacting. But in order to mimic the actual case, interacting part with the non-interacting, we are just introducing this XC, exchange correlation. Okay, so the kinetic energy non-interacting. So the total kinetic energy we are considering as a non-interacting, and this U, which consider all the potential energy between electron, we are considering as the kind of effective. Okay, so essentially we are getting the Hamiltonian, the total energy as the kinetic energy, non-interacting kinetic energy plus effective. Okay, so the Hamiltonian we are getting something like this. So non-interacting kinetic energy plus effective. So this effective will have this external part, Coulombic repulsion part, and the exchange correlation. Okay, so these two within this effective, now these two are easy to get, but you see is not good. So you get the energy term and also you get the Hamiltonian term. Okay, so now we can get back to this by using this kind of the back and forth energy and Hamiltonian. We come across to the exact variable, that is the density. Okay, so this is a pictorial representation. This is the actual case. You have got kinetic energy, external energy, then Hartree energy, and then external energy. That was the Hartree form. Okay, now what we are dealing with the kinetic energy, we are subdividing into two ways. One is the non-interacting and interacting. External is remaining same, Hartree fork is remaining same. Now the exchange will have two parts. One is the exchange in the Hartree fork will have two parts there in the density functional theory called the exchange and correlation. Okay, so these are interacting. So what about this shaded part are the interacting part. So all this interacting we are clubbing together as a exchange in terms of energy, and in terms of the potential we are just writing as a kind of effective. You got it? Okay, so essentially the kinetic part you are doing it, and all these all together, this external the other energy part, we are for that energy we are writing their potential as a effective. So this is the effective potential, including the three potential term, and is manipulate the ground state electron density of the non-interacting system to be identical with that of the true unit. So essentially this kind of this clever approximation we are dealing, so that the interacting system are kind of a plot, kind of what to say, they are kind of the represented as a non-interacting, but we are cleverly introducing some of the unknown functional, so that it's mimic the total energy as if they for the case of the internal energy. Okay, so only term is this exchange correlation XC or U effective, which is unknown. Okay, so that you need to get it. Okay, so what are the kinetic energy? Now, as I mentioned, kinetic energy, it's easy to get it because it's a non-interacting part. So generally we get the for a system of different atom, we will have their different wave function, which we use as a kind of a basis set. Okay, or can be a kind of a linear combination of the basis set, and from there we can easily calculate the kinetic energy. Okay, so because this is a non-interacting, we can easily calculate it. Okay, so non-interacting kinetic energy, we can get it kind of this essentially psi is for the case of the wave function type. So for non-interacting case, we call it a kind of a constant, as I mentioned in the earlier case. So this phi we consider is not, this phi is not a true sense is a orbital wave function. Essentially it is a kind of the, because in the density function theory you don't get individual wave function, you get the overall electron density. Okay, but in order to calculate the electron density, we use this this wave function, and while energy minimization, this wave function get refined. Okay, so at the end of it, what we get is called the constant orbital. Okay, so from this constant orbital itself, we can get the kinetic energy. For each step, we will also this kinetic energy get refined. Okay, because each step you will get this constant orbital. Okay. So this non-interacting kinetic energy account for most of the total kinetic energy, and the neglected interacting energy will be included in the exchange coordinate. That what we have shown in the earlier slides. Okay. So what is the external part? Again, external part is depend upon it's, as we mentioned, it's only depend upon on the density. Okay, so there is some kind of the functional form we are writing as a kind of a external functional form, and this external energy is a functional, meaning that it is a function of the density, and density itself is a function of the xyz. Okay, so therefore a functional take a function, and so you need to have this functional form. But you know the for each step we'll get the we get the refined density, and from the density, if you use some kind of the functional form, then we get the external energy. Okay, Hatti energy as it was the kind of a Coulombic energy as we have done it for the case. So essentially, simply the electron density divided by the by their distance. Okay, and the concept correlation energy, that is the main difficult part. So the exchange correlation energy, which considers all the quantum effect and its explanation in terms of the electron density as a exchange and correlation. So this is the exchange energy between the electrons and the same spin, and this is the correlation energy between the electron with the different spin. Okay, so exchange part is associated with the Pauli exclusion principle, which is equivalent to the wave function antisymmetric nature with respect to the exchange of any two electron coordinates. Okay. And the exchange energy can be calculated but approximated in the DFT as the sum of the four center integrals, like in the Hartree-Fock case, as a function of the single particular value. So essentially, this part, the exchange part, is almost same as we do in the case of the Hartree-Fock, but in this case, essentially we use the refined wave function, which is called the constant wave function. Okay. Only difficult part is the correlation. Okay, so two electrons will give that. I think I have defined it. What is correlation energy? If we have two different spins, they can occupy the same orbital, but electrons are of their same charge, same negative charge, so they will also repel. Okay, so there will be certain kind of this interaction, and this interaction is called the electron. Though their charge is same, but they stay together because of the different spin, and so that means we can say that these electrons kind of form some kind of the positive hole in between, so that they stay together. Okay, so this kind of this business is called the electron correlation, and for all the correlation calculation also we generally resort to this kind of the hole concept, electron hole concept. Okay. Okay, let's come back to the how we get the correlation energy. Okay, and before we do that, how to get the correlation energy, if you just do some kind of the magnitude analysis of the energy term for, let's say, helium case, you can see that the most of the energy are kind of the external energy, which is negative. External means electron nuclear attraction energy, kinetic energy, which is positive, Hatti energy, which is also due to the electron repulsion, and the exchange energy part is the negative part, and it account for this case around 8.38%. But it is exchange correlation also, it will consist of exchange and correlation. Okay, how much is the exchange? Is around, let's say, if the total energy is around 2.9 Hatti, but in this case for the exchange part around 1.25, and the correlation is something 0.04, and if you consider the Hatti energy is around 2.49. So you can say that this exchange is almost half of the Hatti energy, but in the opposite side. So that means this will cancel it out. Okay, so this correlation is also very small, around 0.042. Okay, so you can see that the exchange energy cancel one half of the Hatti energy, and the electronic correlation energy that are only, this is only about 0.3%. Okay, however, the exchange correlation is actively involved in the change happening in the atomic, molecular, or solid system, and it crucially determined for example, how the structure will be, whether the structure is BCC or FCC, whether an atom prefers a top or a hollow site on the metal surface, and whether a magnetic materials become ferromagnetic or antiferromagnetic with spin density. And so what it is saying? It's saying that though the correlation energy contribution is very small, but this dictates the overall property. It dictates to the overall property of the material, whether it can be semiconductor, or it can be let's say the insulator or metal, or whether the material can be magnetic. So it is very essential to take care for this correlation energy. Okay. So how we deal? So this is a pictorial representation of it. Let's say this is the exact energy. In the case of the Hatti, this generally don't take care of the exchange part. The Hartree-Fock take care of the exchange. but not correlation, but DFT, density function theory, take care for the exchange correlation. So that's it's coming closer to the exact point. Okay. Now how to get this, because we know the energy term, we know the how the functional forms should be, but we don't know the exact density. Okay, if you don't know exact density for a system, there also cannot get the energy. Okay, but we know their functional form. We know let's say the energy as a function of the density, and it's depend upon the non-interacting kinetic energy, external energy, then Hattie or Coulombic energy, and then exchange correlation. Okay, but these three together are the effective. We can say that E effective corresponding to the E effective. Okay, what we do not know. We do now is to minimize the energy to find the ground state electron density that requires the determination of the function. Okay, so generally, if you look for that, essentially we'll see that if you take the differential of the energy term, then with respect to density, you get the potential. Okay. So each step we are getting the energy, and also we are modifying the potential. Again, we are using this potential to get the energy and all. So these are the method we use with some constant. Okay. What are the constant we use? The constant we use that the variation of the energy function is 0 with respect to the one particle orbitals or electron density, and we use the kind of the Lagrange multiplier to ensure the orthonormativity constant of the orbital. Okay. So this is because if you integrate for a particular electron case or some kind of this orbital case, so essentially that should be equals to the 0. So essentially, if you just differentiate of the energy minus of the psi of this integral of this IRR, it should give the from there you should get the differential of the energy density with respect to the density, give the lambda. Okay. Okay. So from there, if we use this kind of the constraint and all, so we get ultimately the overall quantum equation to get a particular quantum orbital. Okay, so essentially it should be given by this one. Okay, so this is called the quantum equation. So if kinetic energy which is non-interacting, then the effective psi r equal to epsilon r. So this is for one potential the quantum equation for a particular electron. Okay, and this is the quantum orbital for the particular electron. Epsilon r the energy of that electron corresponding to the quantum orbital. Okay, and from that we can use for so if we have n number of electrons, so you will have this n number of equation. Okay, so for all different orbital case. Okay, and from there we can get the quantum orbitals, and from this also we can use get the chemical potential. Okay. Now coming back to how this effective part, this U effective part you are dealing with. So essentially for that you need to see how the functional form of the exchange correlation is. Okay. So generally the exchange correlation function we can deal generally we can treat something like this. Let's say you have got 2 electrons. Okay, and it will